Hey everyone, welcome to Dad Level Podcast. This is a special episode with my dad and one of my best friends, Andrew. We're going to be talking about the 30th anniversary of the PlayStation,
Today.
what it influenced, how it impacted us, the games that were generated
Yeah.
from it, like everything that we love about this console, and why we stick to be fanboys even today. But so, Dad, for you, I know that getting into this, I was getting EGM and we were getting like different gaming magazines besides that one, Game Bro or Game Pro, a couple others, and we had seen Resident Evil, and
Resident Evil.
that was the
It
game that,
was the images that stood out. Man, giant spiders, the zombie, the art for the zombie dogs, the zombies that we're going to be fighting. I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, this is it.
yeah, Resident Evil was the reason we got a PlayStation 1. I remember you coming home after going by Hollywood Video, because back in the day with Hollywood Video and Blockbuster, you could rent consoles and games.
Yeah,
And of course, we didn't know about the memory card. Dad got the system, brought home Resident Evil, and we both played it and loved it. It was just like the game. It was like for fans that were George Romero fans and like his horror zombie trilogy at the time. This was definitely right up our alley. Um, so yeah, it's like seeing this long box was amazing. Like this right here, we played this game. We were like looking at it. It looked like there was like T-Rex arms here and stuff, and then like we know was there's the spiders here, but we never really saw any like T-Rexes, right? Or raptor hands.
I think those end up
That was
were
foreshadowing for Dino Crisis.
Yeah,
for
it was.
Dino
It
Crisis.
was.
I still have that.
But
I think those were probably
probably
Hunters.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
something. Or you know what? Actually, no. The what was it? The Chimeras. The chimeras at
Oh
the
yeah,
end
the
that half
Chimeras.
humans,
Yeah.
half spiders might be a good equivalent to that. But yeah, no, just like this game that was had live action cutscenes at the beginning, then this great, horrible, over the top dialogue for a game for characters. Oh wow,
You,
what a mansion. Jill, take this. Or Jill, you were almost a Jill sandwich.
I had never met a Canadian before, so I didn't. I mean, I was young. I was a punk kid, and I didn't know about the difference in speech. So if you've ever talked to someone from Canada, oftentimes instead of saying Ben Been, they'll say Bean.
Yeah.
So I thought that they screwed up big time whenever Jill ran back, and I think it was whenever she ran into Barry, and
Yeah.
she's like, "Where have you been?" What? It totally threw me off as a kid. It wasn't until later on I was like, oh yeah, there's people that come from different countries and they sound different than you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How they pronounce things differently. But so I did have a structure to this. Basically, I wanted to encapsulate the way we do the structure for this episode to be slightly different. So it will still be a little bit open form, but we want to stick to a certain format. And if we do more of these, which I kind of plan on doing, I think the next one we want to do is going to be the three Xbox 360. But the first question I got for you guys for this is going to be I want to discuss memories of when you first saw the console and then when you picked it up. And which we started off with Dad. He went. We'd been seeing in the game magazines. We saw because we were heavily into Super Nintendo, and this was just like something different. It was CD quality, had great audio. Um, it had a very similar controller style to the Super Nintendo, so it was like wasn't too hard to grasp. And but yeah, Dad came home with it, and me and my sister were just like as we hooked it up. And you're talking like this is what this came out 96,
Thank you.
right?
That Resident Evil was
Yeah.
96.
Yeah, so I mean we literally got this I mean we rented it the day the game came out at Hollywood. And then literally like a month later my dad had bought the system and we had it home. He bought this and this and Tomb Raider for us to play. But this Resident Evil was so good. I mean, just it was amazing. Like just being able to hear real audio in a game. Like the jump scares were great. I mean, the it looked amazing for polygon graphics. I mean, you're this is the start for a lot of us. But yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, so I I guess going back, the memories of when I first saw the system. So this was actually like not too long before I met you guys because I
Hmm.
was still at my old house. This is like 1994 coming into 1995, so we're still over a year away. Wikipedia has Resident Evil as worldwide release March 22nd, 1996. So at this time, we're still a year away from it actually coming out. As far as PlayStation goes, it was very similar to you guys. I had seen it in the magazines, but I had seen it because at the time, being a little kid, you only get, for at least me, you only get one console. And so I was a Super Nintendo kid, or I was a Nintendo kid. So I was very much into console wars and, Genesis sucks and all this other crap. And there was a GamePro magazine that had come out and it was comparing the editions of Mortal Kombat 3, which, of course, I was a huge Mortal Kombat fan as a kid growing up and even now. So I remember going through the magazine, it was like looking at the screenshots, like with the magnifying glass, like, oh yeah, the Super Nintendo's the better one. And then on the next page, it had them, I think, for 32X. I want to say Sega CD and something called a PlayStation. Never heard of it before. I said, what is this? And I'm sitting there looking at it, and it looked so much better than what was on the Super Nintendo, which of course was what, my system of choice. And I had no idea what this thing was. Of course, I didn't have internet. It's 1994. So yeah, had no idea what this was. And I just kept going through and thinking, oh, it doesn't look that much better than Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo still looks good. And so now I became obsessed. So anytime we go, to the supermarket and I'd see a game magazine, I would look to see if it specifically was talking about what the hell a PlayStation was. Because that was the first time I'd seen it was, little images of Mortal Kombat 3 with, the little title, this is 32X or this is Genesis Super Nintendo PlayStation. What? And of course, what I think is that I think a lot of people are the same way. The first time you hear the name of a new console, it sounds like the dumbest name you've ever heard. It takes a while. The next thing you know, it's like second nature. It's like, oh yeah, it's a great name. I remember thinking PlayStation was the dumbest thing. And in fact, because it was so new, I think it had just come out in Japan. This is 94, so I'm guessing it just launched in Japan. Um, they were still spelling it as two words,
Play
PlayStation.
and station, yeah.
Hmm.
And I'm like, man, what is this? And I didn't even know it was Sony. Now that was sort of my inroad into like, I guess, accepting it was that I love Sony. I had a tape Walkman, I had a CD Walkman. My TV was Sony. Like I was very much, I was a punk little kid, but I was very much into, technology, or at least the technology my parents would get me. But I would always be like, yeah, give me the Sony, give me the Sony. Um, so yeah, I finally found another magazine, and that's when I saw it was called Sony PlayStation. And I first saw the image of it, had no idea it was CD based. I fell in love. In fact, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it because I remember I was in a grocery store called Sellers Brothers, which we all
Southern
know
Belle.
down here.
Oh yeah.
It was a local chain, and I'm sitting there. I remember they had an SNK fighting cabinet, and it was like normally I would just go play that because I think it was like Art of Fighting. I didn't even care about that. I was sitting here looking at the magazine, looking at this PlayStation. Blew my mind. In fact, before I realized it was a CD playing system, I'm like, where the hell do you put the cartridge in? And then I saw like the little memory card slot. Of course, I couldn't read the text, but I'm like, do you put the game in there? Like, what is that? I mean, it was just beyond what I would understand at the time. But of course, I begged if I could have this magazine. She got it for me. And then inside was sort of I don't want to say a teardown, but it went into depth of what the PlayStation was. Still a year away from coming to the States, I was already hooked. And I knew what I had to get. I knew what I wanted. Oh, I guess the second part of that, when I got it, I guess There would have been probably within the first year it had come out. I don't want to say 90. It was probably out for less than a year. So either early 96 or late 95.
Hmm.
I got it as either a late Christmas gift or early birthday present. But I had just discovered a place called Funkoland where you could, for better or worse, as I would come to find out over my life, you could trade games in for something called store credit. So I managed to convince my mom. I was like, well, let me go trade in my Super Nintendo and I'll get the credit and then, get the system for almost free. And so she went in there and looked at the terms and was like, okay, well, it's not that bad. And uh, it required a little bit of money at the end of it. But yeah, I convinced her. I was like, yes, and then of course I'll get straight A's. I got straight B's, almost made it.
Nice.
But she went ahead and she did it. And she was actually going to hold it hostage until my birthday. I remember it being like several months away, and I was okay with that until eventually, I think I was in this, we were at Blockbuster, and it was like, dude, I have no Super Nintendo to play. I have this PlayStation that I'm dying to play, and it's, in my mom's room. So I talked to him and I said, can I please just have it now? And they said, okay. So the first game I ended up playing was a game I rented, which was Street Fighter Alpha. Was the first one I played on PlayStation. Also, my first rental on PlayStation.
Street Fighter Alpha. Nice. Yeah, because for us it was Resident Evil. I mean, we played and played and we realized we got so far into the game that we didn't have we needed a memory card to save it because it
Memory
came to the
card, yeah.
egg ribbon, and we're like, what's going on? And it's like my dad's looking in the manual that came with the when we rented it and stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, you have to save your game on a memory card. And we're like, okay, let's go find out what this is. So just leave the console on because we're not opposed to leaving our consoles on for a couple days until we beat a game back in the day because you know you can even tell my friends now it's like Vince your Xbox has been on like 27 days, you haven't ever turned it off. Yeah, I know, it's okay, it'll be fine. But no, we went and ended up buying some Mad Cat memory cards that would end up biting us in the ass later, but
That
um
was because the PlayStation ones were so expensive at first.
mhm.
The name brands were like crazy.
Yeah, $40 for just the
They
standard memory
had you,
card.
but that's because they had you,
Hmm.
because there were people who were diehards. They wouldn't buy the off brands or anything like that. It had to be the official ones, and so they were making a killing on that. The thing I remember most is the graphics, the textures, and the feeling and the sounds. That sold me. And one thing that I taught everybody we talked to all had that same moment, that same thing where something pops up and scares you, or you're surprised and you hit that damn pause button and you go, whoa, and you stop playing for a minute and you're like, okay, gotta take a couple of breaths. All right, now I'm ready to go in. Sometimes you get killed, sometimes you'd be able to get around it. Did you? And then you stop, pause it just to go, did you see that? And everybody in the room talks about it. It was like a community game. My favorite time was playing it up at night after you guys went to bed in the dark, just to add that ambiance. But there were certain points in the game where you wanted that crowd participation. You wanted your family behind you and talking, and you wanted that excitement to grow. Like when you're fighting certain boss levels and stuff like that, especially that ending. Except you don't want a son who waits till you go to work and beats the game.
Andrew was there for that. Yeah, beats the game before you. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're all sitting there because I call everybody, I'm at the end, guys, let's come over. And we're like, Andrew comes over. I don't remember who other friends were coming over. Ember and her friends were over there. And we're like, I'm right there fighting the tyrant. And Ember's like, nah, you're going to beat this game before Dad. Dad's going to get me pissed off.
well,
And she
because
calls
I
you up
was
at
at
work.
the end for a long time, I could not figure out how to friggin' beat the tyrant, and I refused to look at any of the magazines that walked the walkthroughs. I said, I'm going to figure this out myself. And then she calls me and she goes, "You know what? Vince beat the game." I was like, "Go!" I was like Homer. If I could have reached through the phone line, I would have strangled my son. And when I got home, you left the living room. When I first walked in the door, you were like, "Where's he going?" He went to the bathroom. Yeah, he's barricading the door with hammer and nails. But I finally ended up having, because remember when I went to the arcades, I had my mixtape that I used to put on the headphones, and I could beat anything I was playing as long as I had that music. And I was like, I'm defeating this today, tonight. Put on my tape, and once it hit a Cheap Trick song, boom, I got him.
Okay, so
And I was hooked at that point.
I have a different memory of that. I don't know if I'm mixing stuff up. You guys tell me, because obviously the PlayStation really is very intertwined, with our relationship.
Oh yeah, it is.
Almost next year, it'll be 30 years.
Yeah.
Insane, right? So, the way I remember it is I had met you obviously through Amber, and I had already known you, and I had already been coming over, but I feel like this would have been, so the first game I actually owned on PlayStation that I owned was Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
That I got for Christmas, and I couldn't play it because I didn't have the PlayStation yet. And it wasn't until later I told my mom, no, I didn't get it for Christmas. Gosh. Okay, either way, I got Resident Evil. I can't play it. I've had to convince her to let me get my PlayStation before my birthday in August. At this point, I'm finally playing it. And this is my birthday's in August, and I think this is around June of '96 is when I finally got to play it. And I had no concept of a memory card. I didn't. I remember the first time I had found out about the ink ribbons. I'm like, what do you mean save the game? Just save it. That's how it works in Super Nintendo. I don't get it. So later on, I got a Game Informer magazine that had a walkthrough, and I was like, oh, wow, I need a freaking memory card. My friend Brandon at the time, he was always coming over, and he would watch me play, kind of like what your dad was saying. It was like a community experience in a way. So even though, yeah, I would play it and I would be scared by myself, it was much more fun to have my friend there with me. Granted, us being little kids, I needed the strategy guide. I could not do it by myself. And so I would hand the controller off to him, after playing for a little bit, and then, vice versa. He would drive the game. I would read the strategy guide and kind of tell him what to do. But without a memory card, we can only get so far. And I remember, just like you, I left my PlayStation on, I think, for a week to get to the next weekend to wait for him to come over and play. And a storm came through, and the power
Power went out. Yeah.
I lost everything. So he came back, and that weekend I said, we're doing it. We're staying up all night. We're beating it. So we ended up beating it. And I say we again because like a community effort. We beat it at like 2 a.m. And it's sort of a lasting memory I have is us like jumping up and down in my room, but being quiet, going, not being able to scream because my parents are asleep. And it was amazing. It was such a cool feeling because, to be honest with you, that is my earliest memory of beating a game. Because when it came to the PlayStation, I don't really think I considered myself a gamer until the PlayStation. I know I'm kind of jumping ahead on the topics.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
The impact on your life. But yeah, when it came to like Nintendo and Super Nintendo, I'd play for like 10 minutes, put another game in. Play for 10 minutes, put another game in. Super Nintendo, I'd play for a little bit longer, put another game in. Play for a little bit longer, I go outside. Sort of the reaction that your dad was talking about the first time you saw the PlayStation. We hadn't seen anything like this. I mean, unless you were on the cutting edge of PC gaming and you were really looking into like dedicated graphics cards and 3D, you didn't see anything like this either. This was 3D at home in a box from a company everybody knew, Sony. So
yeah, it was
I'm like, hey, this is a big deal. So I really do honestly think this might have been the first. Resident Evil might have been the first game I ever beat.
I can't say that, unfortunately, because I beat many games, but yeah, no.
But real quick, I
Well,
guess
we had the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, and we've been
Oh yeah,
playing
yeah,
all
yeah.
those.
No,
Um,
no, no. But I mean, like, I get where Andrew's coming from because like a lot of my friends were like that. Like even Ryan, like he'll play games and stuff. Like when he does his streams, he's a very big variety show. Unless it's something where he wants to go through and play it and beat it. He's like, he'll play for a little bit or whatever, and it happens. It's not until like that moment that you just it just clicks for you and you're like, okay, I want to finish this because I enjoy it so much. Um, but yeah, no, that was like it was that, and then my dad was looking for any game that could be very similar to this survival horror, and like that was why he ended up getting this one, Space Griffin, which was
mhm.
like mecha, space, sci-fi, alien invasion, The Thing a little bit, with anime cutscenes and stuff and dialogue. It was really fun, but it was another difficult one. Tank controls, of course. It had a really cool story. So, but that was another one we played, and then we just kept moving to the next thing. But another part of it is like another reason why we would usually buy a console was because it had Star Wars games on it.
well, yeah, because PlayStation had what was it, Rebel Assault
Rebel Assault,
and
well,
Rebel
Rebel
Assault
Assault
2,
2 and Rebel Assault 2, Dark Forces, and then you had all the
Dark
other
Forces,
ones, the
yeah.
prequels and stuff. But at first
And
it
then it
was.
had games like Twisted Metal, and I know Twisted Metal y'all introduced me to.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, this is kind of unique. That play field where you weren't actually you couldn't see your character doing anything. You were more, you know, get out of the van, do some fighting. And there's a lot of games like it now. And I was like, that's really cool. I enjoyed it. Um, but the
There was, I
man,
mean,
I
because there
can't.
was like, so like I know that this was a big one for us, and it's been a big one for me ever since. But like we first played this in the arcade, but to be able to get a port of it that was really damn close to, I mean, arcade perfect, the first Tekken.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We played that thing all the time.
I mean, this was the game, and then like everyone after that, it was like anytime we can get a fighting game, Battle Arena Toshinden. I mean, let me see,
What
Andrew, if you want to name some off, you can.
what was it? Bushido Blade. What was the one with the samurais where they were
Bushido
fighting?
Blade. That was
Um,
the yeah, Bushido Blade 1 and 2, which is the
Yeah,
more
I'm
realistic
still in my
simulator.
head. I'm still at the launch of the PlayStation 1. You guys are jumping ahead.
Okay, 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 okay. All right, let's go back. Let's go back. All
Well,
right.
I guess real quick, let me throw this in there about my memory. At some point, Vince, like I said, I already knew you,
Hmm.
and we had talked about Resident Evil. And now my introduction to George Romero was Dawn of the Dead. So where we used to live when we were growing up, if you had basic cable for whatever reason, we got Showtime for free on Channel 6. And one day they played Dawn of the Dead on there, and I watched it as a kid. I thought it was the greatest movie I'd ever seen. So that was my introduction to zombies. That's why I was so enamored with Resident Evil. Now, my memory is that you hadn't beaten it yet because you had rented it, and I lent you my copy.
Yes.
That's what I remember.
Hmm.
So I
You
feel
did.
like you beat it using my copy.
Yeah, we did. We did because we
Okay.
hadn't bought it yet. Yeah, because
Okay, that's
we.
what
yeah, because we didn't. Was renting the PlayStation back then.
Yeah.
I.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh,
we hadn't
okay.
even bought it yet. It
Yeah.
wasn't until we bought it. Um,
That he
but I
got a
don't
copy of it.
remember. Was it Andrews that we had? Because we had it for like a week.
Yeah,
We
Andrew.
were
We borrowed Andrew's because he had
Yeah,
already beaten
because
it.
that's why. Because at first I was like, "Oh, did I meet you and then let you borrow it?" And I'm like, "No, that doesn't sound right." I knew you guys at least for like, I mean, because I knew Ember first for the longest. It wasn't until later I found out you lived in the same neighborhood. But by
Hmm.
that time, I had at least met Vince, and I had met, Mr. Shooter as well for a while, for months. And by the time I got it, I'm like, "Hey, you want to borrow it since you never got a chance to beat it?" And there we go.
The other thing I remember is like there were parts of it I couldn't beat. I couldn't figure out. And so Ember was my puzzle solver. Tried that. She'd be like talking to me over my shoulder. Go try and do that. And then Vince, who was had no patience for me messing up, was like, "Do you want me to do this for you, Dad? Do you want me to?" No, I'm gonna do it myself. And finally, I'd get so aggravated. Here, and he'd take it, get me through it, and go on.
Like a
And
couple
I
seconds, so
was
you go, all right.
determined never to let that happen again. So I started playing my own games, and it had to
Yeah.
be really bad for me to go, Vance, come downstairs.
You have to
I
go
need your
with
help.
your hat in your hand and go, Vance, son.
Yeah, yeah.
Help me with
Beat this part for me so I can move on.
this.
Yeah. I mean, and that it created this long love of stuff. You mean, we talk about fighting games, but like another series that was birthed at this time, Silent Hill.
Silent Hill. Yeah. Or
Well,
Persona.
that was
When did
1999,
Persona?
right?
When did
That was
Persona
19.
come out?
Yeah, that was so
1995?
No, Persona would have been 97.
6?
97.
97. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
96.
96 Persona? Okay.
September 20th, 1996.
Yeah. Okay. That was because that was one of the ones because that was originally I got that whenever I wish I still had my copy, but I got that originally from what Game Bros, the video game store or whatever. Was it Game Bros or Game Pros or whatever? The one over there off of Spencer and
Yeah, I remember the one they had two in the mall. They had EB Games,
mm-hmm.
and then they had like a knockoff one, like a mom and pop game store. That might have been Game Bros.
Because they had a physical location over there by the Walmart area. Because we went there a couple
Well,
times. That's where we got our Resident Evil 2 copy at.
so where is okay, because we used to go originally to rent and get the games and the consoles at a place. It was an old Pasadena Town Square, the old one. And it
Mm-hmm.
was a little mom and pop Asian shop. They had all the imports. We would get the games and they were, in Japanese. We couldn't understand anything, but we were trying to play it through anyway. But I'm trying to remember, Andrew, was it you who loaned me the Dreamcast?
No,
To
No,
that was
I
that was
never
Jose.
owned the Dreamcast.
It was
That was
Jose,
Jose.
so I could play in
Literally
Veronica.
Dreamcast Jose.
Codename Veronica.
Yeah, me and Andrew were the PlayStation guys when the some of our friends were the Sega guys. It was
Yeah,
the
because we had almost every one of the game consoles.
yeah. Eventually, we did have most of them. The only one
So
we
by the
never
time
got.
by the time the Dreamcast had come out, or at least by the time that Code Veronica had come out, you guys were at the apartment because
Yeah, over there. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
came over that night to watch Code Veronica specifically because I think Vince, I want to say you had graduated already. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're talking about. I think I.
Because I don't remember seeing you in school. I swear, I think we were talking on IRS or on ICQ, and you told me that you had it. And we were going to play that night, and that's when I
No,
came.
I think I was still there actually at the time because remember, you're looking at 99 when the Dreamcast came out, so I was still in high school. I was still, and then 2001 would have been when the PS2 came out. So I mean they were pretty close. Or two,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. And I'm trying to remember, did we have the black PS1 or did we have the gray when we bought it?
No, we had the original gray one,
The original gray.
and then they did the PS1 model, which is the white one.
No.
We didn't get the PS2 until like after I had graduated because it was
Well, I
Yeah,
still have the original one I bought.
that was what, October 2000.
mm-hmm.
Well, can you see my screen? I opened up a
Yeah,
share.
I got it. You got it.
Yeah,
So
we're looking at it.
this was the first. This was the first game I had rented for PlayStation 1 after, like, once I actually, like, owned it.
Mm-hmm.
This was Disruptor. So I think, Vince, you had showed yours. What was yours? The space, was it Griffin, Space Griffin or
Space
something?
Griffin would have
There
been
you
the
go.
one that my dad had purchased. That was like the first one we actually bought because it was that Tomb Raider and then Resident Evil. So those three games at that time.
So I had rented this one, Disruptor, like 3 or 4 times because I couldn't beat it. So
Mm-hmm.
even though, yeah, Resident Evil was the first one I owned, Disruptor here was, I felt like I owned it because I had rented it so many times. I went back and I played this one on emulator. does not hold up. So I don't regret passing this one up a few times. I've seen it in the wild and I wanted to buy it off of nostalgia, but I never did, and I
Is
don't
it that
regret.
bad?
It's not bad. It's just a PlayStation 1 first person shooter. So
You
you could kind of
you
draw
can't
your conclusion there.
don't judge today's standards by then, because back then, we hadn't seen stuff like this, especially in your own home.
Well, keep in
You
mind,
know,
I had already played the hell out of Doom, but it's mouse and keyboard was, I mean, that's what, let me, I guess, let me like rephrase that. Coming from Doom, doing mouse and keyboard,
mhm.
uh, I was so used to that I couldn't control this game.
Yeah,
And
that's
I was running Doom and Duke Nukem 3D on, I think my first computer was a Hewlett Packard Pavilion, and it wasn't high end, but it was good enough. Doom had already been out for a couple of years. Duke Nukem 3D had just come out, and I was used to mouse and keyboard. So trying to play Disruptor, it just wasn't having it. Now there was another one, Jumping Flash, which I felt controlled a little bit better. I just feel like they couldn't get this one down because there was another one that was a piece of trash that I've seen people like kind of talking about that was good. This one here, Codename Tinka.
Tinka. Yeah.
I had saved up money, and this was the first game I ever bought based off the cover alone. The very first one. Unfortunately, I would do it again in a game that you all know very well, shall go unmentioned by me. Um, but yeah, this was the first one, and I hated it. And I was like, wow, there goes $50.
Well, I mean, like this one here was definitely
Much better.
perfected
Much better.
perfected the controls for a first person shooter on the
Yeah.
Done
PlayStation.
Medal of Honor. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, of course we were talking about this earlier, but like Dark Forces was a good version. And it played very well, but it was more Doom than it was, what you're getting here, where
Oh,
it was full
uh,
polygon environments.
yeah.
But
They have mods of this, of Tenka,
mhm.
that will use mouse and keyboard. Like if you use, a PlayStation emulator. I just don't feel the need to go back and play this one. This one it
It
didn't strike me. It didn't sit with me, and I was very mad. But yeah, that's going into the memories, so to speak. But
I don't
I
remember this
never
game.
played it.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
even
never
if I
played
saw it.
this. I don't
yeah,
think I remember
so
this at it.
I had seen this at Blockbuster, and it was always checked out. So I assumed that it was an awesome game. It was, a badass game. So saving up my money from mowing the yard, the front and back, saved up my cash for about 2 months. And I said, hey, I want to go to the mall. I want to go get a game. Went to the mall, saw that was there, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Now, I don't remember if I had internet at the time. I probably did, but the concept of like looking up a review just wasn't a thing to me. I mainly looked up walkthroughs because I just, my brain wasn't formed yet. So yeah, I bought this one sight unseen, just off the cover, and the music is really good. I will say that I do remember the music being really awesome. But no, trying to play through it, it was way too dark. This screenshot here is extremely forgiving. I mean, it's probably an HD upscale, but yeah, it was a very dark, controlled like ass, and I was not a big fan of it at all. And that was a hard lesson learned. $50 gone.
Yeah, exactly. Back then, it was hit and miss unless you were able to rent it, and then you could find out if it was good or not.
Well, then see, that was the key. Rent it first before you paid for it, because then you get stuck with a game that you would try to go and trade in, and they give you, squat for it
Hmm.
because they knew they weren't going to be able to sell it.
I was thinking about that the other day. In my local Funko Land, they had so many copies of Sewer Shark for the same CD
Yeah.
that because I think it was a pack in.
It was a pack in with the Sega CD. Yep. Yep.
They would give you a penny for it.
Yeah.
Traded it in.
And that was a hard game too. Like just memorizing because it was very unforgiving and like
Were
the
you into full
used.
motion video games? I wasn't.
I mean, yes, it depends on the game. Some of them we were into, but a lot of them
As
no.
I don't know. I could never get into it. Like I don't know. I guess because like at that time, even as a kid, I was in a computer class and we were doing like we were learning Office or whatever it was called back then. And they had, like a version of PowerPoint. And I remember saying, this feels like a PowerPoint presentation to me. Whereas if I did, I mean, even, because unfortunately, they were teaching us, these computer skills even early back then.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so yeah, unlike other kids, like I knew what PowerPoint was, and that's what full motion video games they felt like to me. So even when my buddy Brandon, when his brother bought a Sega CD, the first thing on my mind was, oh, let's play Mortal Kombat. He said, no, it's got this one, it's like a movie, it's called Sewer Shark. So I went over there and I was like, this game's kind of trash.
What are you doing, dog meat?
Yeah, and I'd much rather watch it. So going back to what you were talking about with Resident Evil, I didn't know it could play video. And
Yeah.
so when I first saw that opening cinematic, I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And then immediately dropped the controller and skipped the cutscene when it hit the floor.
Hmm.
I had to reset.
Yeah, no, but I mean, there was other games that had like really cool FMV stuff that we ended up getting on the PlayStation. Like, of course, Wing Commander 1 and 3 and 4.
3 and 4. Yeah.
Yeah, and those were great. But
So
uh,
there's a hold on. Can you look up a game called Descent? I want to make sure if that's the right name I'm
yeah, it's
Oh
thinking.
yeah,
Descent.
Descent
Yeah,
was
Descent.
was cool.
It wasn't cool for my dad.
Man, I love playing it. It was like Halo. I could play it for a little bit, but man, after a while, it would get me sick as a dog.
Really.
Is that yeah,
Yeah,
free motion
Uh,
movement controls and stuff. The floatiness of it would make him disoriented.
yeah. Same thing I'm getting from learning how to use the VR now.
But yeah, this is because like I ended up finishing this, but Dad was like he got close and then he's like, no, I can't.
I'm done.
And
I'm
he'd
done.
get he I gotta go to the bathroom. I'm like just because he
You
was
know, I
nauseous.
was not gonna spend the day, night vomiting so I could beat a game. I was just no.
yeah, I think this is another one that I had seen a lot in the magazines, but I never really jumped into it. The one that I guess is similar that I really liked, I had played on a demo disc. And I was gonna show my demo disc, but I'd have to like dig and pull it out. But it had Twisted Metal on there, and it also had Warhawk,
Yeah, Warhawk.
which that one I got for Christmas. And I love the controls on that one. This is pre-analog, but I thought it controlled very well with the shoulder buttons. I freaking loved Warhawk. I loved that first one, and I played it a lot. I thought that one was really, really well done.
And the other thing that we got from the PlayStation were some of the animated games that they were like movies. They were like animated
Dragon
movies.
Slayer type. Yeah, the
Yeah,
Brain Dead
the
13 and
yeah, which was one of my favorite, but it kept
Blazing
dying on
Dragons.
me at that same friggin' spot, and I was like, okay, I'm not buying this if it's this glitchy.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean there was a lot of genres that were started. I mean, like one that me and Andrew are big fans of is the Tenchu Stealth Assassins, this first one here. We played this forever. I mean, like months and months, just playing it because you had two different characters you can play through, and like the missions were like slightly different for each character. The ninja stealth death donuts, basically the unaguri with the that you would throw down that was poison that would make people just like go crazy, and you just come up and stealth kill them, and then going through the whole game like that was fun.
Well, what
I wish
about when did Final Fantasy come out and like
Well,
Chrono
seven.
Trigger?
seven was Final Fantasy seven. Seven would have been Final Fantasy seven. That would have been 9/7/97.
Oh, it says initial release January 31st. It just says January 31st.
Yeah, that's the US. I mean, that's the Japanese version.
To
It was
1997.
it was September 7th,
There we
1997.
go. There we go. Yeah. So it's close to your birthday.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember getting that game, coming home from. I mean, come on, man. This is where you at? My original copy right here.
Wow.
Remember getting this from EB at Pasadena Town Square Mall, coming home, playing this till almost midnight. I was at the Shinra building about to leave it. And Dad's like, you got to go to bed. You got school tomorrow. Damn it. What?
Do you remember what day of the week that was?
Oh, no, actually, you know what's funny is like I remember that being a Tuesday, but man, it says it's a Sunday. That's so weird because I don't remember
Really?
that game. Yeah, because I remember getting off of school and
It
Jonathan
was
was like,
Wednesday.
dude, my
Or,
mom's gonna go take me over there to go.
yeah, Sunday.
Yeah, which is so weird because it didn't come out on a Sunday. So, but the thing was like, because remember
Only
John
this
goes,
thing came out on a Sunday.
yeah, I was
Maybe
like,
you just got it a couple of days later. You swear you got it when it came out.
you know what? It might have been because it broke streak date.
Hmm.
Because remember, Games broke streak date back then. So it probably was going to come out like on like that Tuesday because usually games come out on Tuesdays. Because I remember that Tuesday, John's like, "Hey man, my mom's going to go take me over to Pasadena Town Square. You want me to ride with you to go get your game?" I said, "No, I got to wait for my dad." Because we'd only put down the $5. We didn't actually pay off the game fully until we went and got it.
Got it.
And I just remember us going there, and I think like I don't remember like if you made food, Dad. I don't remember what food you made. I just know that we came home. I put it in and I just played it and just was just sitting there.
Yeah, I mean, we watched it. It was like watching a movie,
Hmm.
you know. Um,
And then like by that Friday, I was at Sephiroth and like about to beat the game, and that's when my memory card decided to go, nope, you're not going to work. You're going to get corrupted data. And then we went and
What was it?
literally,
Mad Cats?
yeah, Mad Cats, yeah. And I took what little bit of money I had left over, bought me a two pack that they had of the memory cards, and I got one for my dad, one for me, because that's what I did was I was able to split it. Because back then they were like $40 for the two pack instead of the original when they were originally $40. And sure enough, like I was like I popped it in, I had to start all over, but dude, yeah, inflation for 1997. Yeah, $78.
that's what it would be
Bucks,
now.
big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Oh
would have been a big
wow.
deal. Yeah, that's hey, that makes sense, right? So what was the
Because I
PlayStation
mean,
going?
I hear $40 now, and I'm like, yeah, that's not cheap, but I can wing it. But in $97, or coming today, it's like, oh hey, I need memory card, for my Xbox. Okay, it's $80.
Yeah.
To me, that's like the price of that SSD for the Xbox if they want. It's like $250.
Hmm.
So
It's crazy. But I mean, like with that, like you had that was the thing is like the PlayStation was the console for RPGs. I mean, there was so much more than just that, but like
it's because of you that I even knew what an RPG was.
hmm
So I had no idea what it was, and I had seen Final Fantasy advertised during wrestling. And I was like, man, that game looks awesome. Had no idea it was an RPG. Had no idea what that was. Till I came over to your house and I was watching you play Final Fantasy. And I don't know if you remember me asking you this, but I go, why do you have to wait to attack them? Why don't you just hit them? Because
hmm
I had no concept of that style
Yeah,
of
what an RPG was. Yeah.
right. And it was so funny because again, I'm younger than you, so my little kid brain, hadn't formed yet to figure out how to play that. So a couple years later, when Pokemon comes out, oh, I'm all over that, not even realizing I was playing an RPG.
Hmm.
So, that opened me up to a whole different genre of game. Now, I don't play many. Of course, like I asked you about the Final Fantasy 3 because it has more like a cyberpunk story, kind of like
Hmm.
7, that really
Yep.
interests me. So that's going to be something that I'm going to dive into pretty soon. But yeah, and you had that other one that I ask you about probably once every 5 years, that zombie RPG game. No, I freaking love Parasite Eve. I have both of those. You know which one I'm talking about? It's like worth a ton of money right now.
Oh, Kudelka.
Is that what it is? I ask
Uh,
about it like once every 5 years.
yeah, Kudelka was the one that was like the medieval, not medieval, but it was set in a period time. You go into this haunted mansion with a priest, this one a thief, and this character that's a but you fight zombies and stuff. It has like kind of a tactical feel a little bit with the combat. There's durability with the weapons.
Yeah, see that look that see I wanted to play this one. You have this one, right?
I'm actually buying it from a friend. I did have it at one point.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember you had it back in the day though, right?
Yeah.
Because I heard about it from you and it looked awesome. But I remember I came over and was actually watching you play Vagrant Story, thinking
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
this. And I
Hmm.
was like, it doesn't look like what you were talking about. And then I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
Vagrant Story set totally different. But that's another good one. It had a really cool art style. But yeah, Parasite Eve, of course. You got Vandal Hearts, which is another
Vandal Hearts, Suikoden.
yeah.
which one was the one that detected your
Oh,
like
yeah.
your
So
chip
yeah,
or
that's
whatever
the
it
thing. All right.
was?
So first off, you gotta
The
talk about
Reed and
this.
Vern games.
This
It's
game,
Wild Arms.
fantastic. Wild Arms was
Wild
great.
Arms. Yeah.
Wild Arms had like this amazing opening cutscene. You play three characters, and it was awesome. But it was the second one
You
that
stop, cat.
right here, this one right here, I I bought a mod chip. My boss, when I was working at Game Crazy, installed it, was playing import games. It was awesome. This came out, and I was like, all right, I want to play this because I enjoyed the first one. As the moment I popped it in, I got the message that it detected that my system had been modified. So I had to go to my boss, and he had snipped it out of my the mod chip out of my PlayStation 1, and then you were like, okay, well, we'll go back and maybe put the switch so that way you can switch it on or off, so that way it wouldn't detect it. But we never did. So I somewhere in my in one of my bins of stuff is a mod chip for the PS1.
Really? Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
but I can.
remember. Do you remember what the screen looked like?
Oh no, Termite stuff.
Because I remember when it happened. I didn't hear about it from you. I want to say I heard it from a friend.
I
That,
think it was. I think it's the circle, the one right there where it says software Terminator console may have been modified. Maybe I don't remember. It just said something weird. And I was like, dang it, I want to play this so bad. I just bought it. I come home from work and I was like, oh no. But yeah, I don't know that the mod chip was nice for what it was because I mean we had all the Dragon Ball games, we had the Macross digital missions, and a couple other
all those
stuff.
Dragon Ball games, those were fighting games, right?
Yeah,
Like
most of them were fighting games. Yeah.
games.
Hmm. Yeah, they were all fighting games. Even and it was cool that all that stuff got ported over later towards the end of the console life. You know, you can get GT. Well, you could get GT back in the day before that, but it got an additional release because it was a limited production of it or limited run. And then eventually they had released Ultimate Battle 22 and Legends, so you could get all three of those in the States. But yeah, no, I mean, like, of course, this Omega Boost with Static X for the soundtrack. This is a fun one.
Is so I wasn't a big fan of Omega Boost. I thought I rented it either or I borrowed it from you. I don't remember.
Hmm.
It was okay. I thought it was okay. I think, I guess like we talked about our favorite games. Obviously the big one that I don't think anybody's mentioned. I won't get into it too much because it'll be another 5 hour discussion. Metal Gear Solid, enough said. Um, Completely, it blew me away more than Resident Evil did. But what I would want to bring up to you guys is sort of different than our favorite games. But what's a game that you took a chance on? What's a game that you took a chance on, specifically on PlayStation, and it sort of like kind of blew you away? Whether you got it, for the box art, you took a chance, or you just heard about it, or you read about it. What game out there did you take a chance, specifically with the PS1, that we haven't discussed, that you were like, yeah, I took a chance on this. Absolutely awesome. And I don't think enough people talk about it.
That's a good question. I have to think about that one.
Yeah, me too. Because, like I said,
We were always
I
open
you know
to anything.
I wasn't wealthy, right? And so I had to make sure what we were buying we were going to play.
Yeah, that's how I am
And if if they were, it was something they weren't going to be interested in, I wasn't going to be interested in, I wasn't going to waste my money on it. So we would rent something just to make sure we liked it. That was one of my main. I had, that's just what I said, guys. We'll rent it first. If you like it, then we can get it.
Hmm.
Um, Vince would get a little hyped up, and he'd be like, "Oh, I heard all so much about this. It's coming out today. We got to go get this." And then, but I don't think he ever got a game that you
I
were
never got a
disappointed
game
with.
that was disappointed with. Yeah, that was one of the things. It's like I remember the thing I can only say that I was a big Castlevania fan. Like Super Castlevania was my favorite. So Super Castlevania 4. Um, and then and I want to talk about this anyway, but like this game came out, I had totally forgot about it. Like I knew I wanted to play it, but I just wasn't sure at the time. And then it's just keep in mind this is like after Final Fantasy VII. I was looking for something else. My grandmother had purchased me the Power of the Force AT-AT that light up and it had some other features, but none of that stuff worked. So we ended up taking it back, and I had like the trade-in value or basically store credit from Toys R Us to go get whatever I wanted, and because they didn't have any more of the AT-ATs for me to buy. Well, the game I ended up picking up, and I was like, this is my original copy. So this is technically my
Oh,
grandmother got this for me with Symphony of the Night. I love this game. I've played this game so many times. I know it back and front. I mean, I can speed run it. I can officially say that I can no death run it. But I enjoy this game a lot. I love the music, and this is definitely one of my favorite Castlevania games, if not my favorite. But yeah, this is definitely high up there. Like I
yeah. I think I own
spent hours and
two
hours
copies.
playing
I
that.
own two copies of that. I have the PlayStation One,
Hmm.
which of course I bought years later, and then I bought it again on the 360.
Yeah.
And I know as sacrilegious as it is, I played it through the first way through on PlayStation.
Hmm.
Obviously, I loved it. The music was great. However, on the 360, because of the custom soundtracks, there's a band I really like, and they had just released an album that I thought went really well with this game. And so I played that album over the music on the 360 when I played this game, and I thought it went really well. So now, even to this day, if I do get an itch to load it up, I have to do that same process. So the band is called Dark Tranquillity, and they, of course, now I'm forgetting the name of the album, but it had just come out right around the time that they had released this game for the 360 on what was it, Xbox Live
Xbox,
Arcade.
Xbox Arcade. Yep.
So when they had done that, I was like, oh man, I had been listening to this album, Dark Tranquillity, for a while. This album is awesome. Um, and you know what? It kind of goes with freaking Castlevania. And so I played it on top of that. And it was like a brand new experience. It was really cool. But I guess to go back, since I understand where you guys are coming from, you're not really.
Here's one you mentioned, Xenogears,
Oh yeah, Xenogears is another great one.
How does it sound?
Legacy of Kain. Remember,
Ah,
Final Fantasy Tactics. I liked that because it was like chess.
a guy at
Um,
my school let me borrow that. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and I was like, I remember at the time I go, "Oh, this is a Vince game," and I had to very politely give it back to him because I couldn't play it.
Yeah.
we talked Dino Crisis. I still have that one. I'm trying to look through some of the stuff. I couldn't do the skater stuff like the Tony Hawk that they were always playing. I try it and
Love
I'd
Tony
end up
Hawk.
getting bored with it and walk off.
Yeah, I so sight unseen, I rented that one from Blockbuster because I don't know if Tony Hawk had done the 900 yet, but I remember loving watching like the X Games. And so I saw Tony Hawk, he has a game, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna rent this and I'm gonna play it. Didn't realize what phenomenon it would become, but I freaking love that game.
This game
That
right here,
that's
man.
gotta be
This is the game crazy game. This is the game that all of us played. We all competed to try to get the highest score. There
I
was
want to
even
talk about that.
there was even a tournament
Moving
that we
on,
did.
moving on, moving on. Uh, Tony Hawk is going to be one of my top rentals of all time. Like if I look back, I mean, obviously I own the game and I got it for my birthday, but looking back on games that I had rented at the time, now that renting is pretty much dead, Tony Hawk, the first one specifically, will go down as probably one of my top five rented games of all time. Especially because I went into it not knowing what to expect, and it was awesome. Um, but going back, a sight unseen game, I got this one bought for me, and would come to love it. And most people say, it's an average, mediocre game. That's fine, but I love this game. The reason I got it bought for me was my grandma because she had a crush on Bruce Willis and saw that he was in this game. Uh, Apocalypse, PlayStation 1. So she bought this for me. And she's like, well, I love Bruce Willis. Her two favorite actors were Bruce Willis and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Well, Jean-Claude Van Damme didn't have a game. But if you don't count the Street Fighter, the movie, the game. Well, Bruce Willis did. And so she bought this for me. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into with this. But it's essentially kind of like, without the jumping and flying, it plays a lot like Space Harrier, or MDK, if you remember
Yep,
that
yep.
game.
Yeah, I remember both. Space Harrier is one of my favorite.
So think Space Harrier, but without the flying, and that's essentially what this is. But it's so crazy, all the crap you can blow up and all this. But talking about a soundtrack in here, this was the first time I had heard System of a Down. They had a System of a Down song in this game, and in fact, because it was PlayStation, kind of like on Tony Hawk 2, where they had videos, like live action videos playing in the game, like in the background, they had the video for System of a Down for the song that they were playing um, in this game. And I remember, oh, is it in the background?
Yeah, there
Yeah,
you go.
there is.
There's Surge.
And it was, I was like, oh my God, because I didn't know who System of a Down was at the time. But I would come to know them. I remember this is first their big hit was Sugar, and then I loved that one. Got the CD, and then come to find out, oh hey, those are the guys from Apocalypse.
Yep. I mean, think about like things that we got that we never thought we would get, like were like almost like either sequels or homages to other franchises or other source material. And like I never thought that I'd have an Evil Dead game with Bruce Campbell doing the
Oh
voice,
yeah, yeah.
and like it just being a continuation of the original three movies. This was great at the time.
Well, it's just
I
like I
watched
love
Robert play that one, and
Alone in the Dark. See, the Alone in the Dark series was one of my
Mhm.
favorites. Um, but I just remember a period of time when there were a lot of games that came out with actors, in them. Big name movie stars who were the models for the characters in the games.
well, I definitely
Um,
do more of that now. But I feel like back then it was, you didn't really see it too much. It was like a big deal. That's how my grandma had found this game. She's like, well, Bruce Willis. It's like the only other one I could think of, and I know there's more examples, but the only other one that I could think of that's somewhat even near this time was Jean Reno. It was Onimusha 3.
Yeah,
Onimusha 3, yeah. And then there was which one
which is that's a
wasn't
great
there?
franchise and great game.
Yeah, man, I love that game. Um,
But
well, there
specifically
were a
talking
couple
about
of
non like movie games. Obviously, if it's a movie game, it's going to have the actors in it.
Yeah.
But actors in non movie games, like again, Apocalypse. I can think of Onimusha. Of course, this was years later. That kind of come off the top of my head as a not
Mhm.
as being like a big name actor in a game that's not tied to a movie.
Yeah, no, I'd have to think about it. There's quite a bit. I mean, of course, like Wing Commander with Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell and uh, John Raimi's Dave's. I can't even say his middle name at the moment. But yeah, just there was a lot of people that were
Oh
in
yeah,
video
Command and
games.
Conquer had actors.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in two, you had Michael Biehn and James Earl Jones, and like even the Red Alert stuff, you had Tim Curry and
Walter
Billy D.
White.
Williams. Yeah, so um but no, like even back to Metal Gear, just well, I'll get into that. So I want to do like the third part of this episode real quick, and that is, how this impacted your life and in your gaming history, and like what let me rephrase that. How did the PlayStation impact your life in gaming?
Took
Well,
me took me out of the arcade and put me in front of a television.
wasn't that the slogan for the Genesis was arcade at home?
Yeah, arcade at home, yeah, just about. Yeah, I mean, for me, like I had already started defining myself as a gamer back then, but I believe that like I really kind of felt that this was the thing that I would my passion was gaming, and I felt more identified as a gamer because of there was so much. It broadened my horizons to like things I've never played before on the Super Nintendo, NES, Genesis, and all that. You know, I became a fan of this brand over like Nintendo, over Xbox at the time. Whenever they came out with the Xbox One, I was still a PS1 guy, I mean PS2 guy and stuff. So it was very,
Because we were all playing wrestling for a while there. Which one was the one where you made all the characters of each one of us?
it was a SmackDown.
That would have been SmackDown. Just Bring It
Yeah.
for PS2. That was this was the first SmackDown game for PlayStation 2. Yeah. So that would become a trend. I even have an old video on YouTube where I made like I think my where I currently work in my old position when I worked out in the factory, I made my boss and I did like commentary over the video. Um, it's cringe because it's full of inside jokes, but it cracks me up. But yeah, that would be a lifelong passion is, creating people I know and putting them in the games. But this was the one where I made everybody and put them in there.
Yeah, because we started with what, SmackDown 2 with Josh and them and Richard. And it was then we found out that Andrew was doing it, so he got wrapped into the fold of us all doing it. And then that was when he made
Yeah, I was a
Mark and
I was a
us, and
pro.
yeah,
Nobody, the only person that could beat me was, or even stand toe to toe with me was Bobby. But because yeah, only having one system, and having PlayStation and then PlayStation 2, this was my wrestling game. I didn't, unfortunately, at the time, wasn't able to play the Aki wrestling games on 64 unless I went to somebody else's house like Bobby's
mhm.
house. So I had no choice but to be godlike in these games. And I remember specifically an old memory, a very fun one. It was the first time I had met Richard at the trailer. And, he's a big wrestling fan. So we started talking about wrestling, and his little brother was there at the time, but he was really young. And I was like, you want to play, SmackDown? I don't know if it was your copy or my copy, but we're
Yeah, I
playing.
remember.
And I'm like, okay, well, I only know how to go 0 to 100. I don't ease into it. I assume he's as good as I am. So we start playing. Well, I start laying the SmackDown. And I remember his little brother was behind me and he was kind of like hitting me on the back.
Chris.
He's like, come on, Richard, get him. He's not that good. And I'm sitting here like, I don't know you guys. Why are you hitting me? I'm trying to win. And that was always a fun moment to me because I literally like I mean I would just reverse every move because at that time they didn't have a reversal meter like they did in later games. So you had to pick and choose your spots when you were going to reverse a move. So it was just reverse, 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 reverse. Um, but yeah, it was a fun time. And what we would do is I would create a character, create all the characters, and I would just watch them, let the CPU play, and it would always lead to hilarious results.
Yeah, with Mr. Shooter
But
being the reigning champion of most of those sometimes.
yeah,
Was Soul Calibur PlayStation 1 or 2?
that was two.
2.
And what's the Soul Edge on PS2
Soul Edge would have been on PS1.
or PS1?
Yeah.
So I don't think I played that one.
Yeah.
Blade.
Soul Blade. Well, yeah, that's the I think one's the Japanese title, one's the American. But yeah, Soul Calibur originally debuted on the Dreamcast, and then PS2 got the second game.
Second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played Soul Calibur at Bobby's house. That was a fun one.
Hmm.
Never got good at that one.
I mean, we always got to think about like all the things that we did. I mean, I guess we're getting into I
How it
mean,
affected our lives.
well, the I mean, just I made a lot of friends with the PlayStation,
That's what I was going to
and
say. It
I
really
had
creates a community.
mhm. Between the friends we had in high school when we were doing stuff with like Alex and Bobby and them, and then or the tournaments we used to do. Another big thing that was very, very important in our lives is, of course, was the MTV Music Generator. We actually made tracks that we ripped to our computers and then sold as CDs
I was
in
gonna, yeah, that
in the
was y'all's,
school. Yeah, we were
y'all
making our
spirit when
own.
y'all were gonna be, what do
We
you
were
call it?
being our
Big
own DJs.
music producers.
Yeah, we were.
We were
That's
making
the one thing.
mixtapes.
If 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 Alex was here, he was the one that ignited our entrepreneur spirit. We wanted to do anything we could to make money, but we had this group of people, what Game Masters of America, Akuma's Cave. There's the story and legends live on through us here locally, but we had such a tight knit group of people that all over Houston that would come together either at Game Crazy when I worked there or whenever we did tournaments, we would make tours around to do arcades. But it all goes back to the PlayStation. As many games we would play, just the shenanigans we would get into. My friends throwing other friends off balconies because they're being dicks while we're playing Tekken. I mean, it's endless, endless fun of nostalgia and shenanigans.
To piggyback off of what you said about, becoming a gamer, that's how it was with PS1. It was a 1-2 punch. The first punch was Resident Evil. Not ever having played a game like that, you knew that you were playing something special. And then the knockout blow was for me Metal Gear Solid.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I think I had probably like 30 Super Nintendo games. Um, and again, it was like I would play them, get to a save spot if it had saves or passwords, and I had my little password book where I'd write stuff down. And I might go back to it later, I might not, but it was always about like I wanted to play a new game. I wanted to rent a new game. I wanted, to get one for my birthday. I never really absorbed it. That was like, my little kid brain. And it's funny seeing that, in my stepson as he was growing up, he was the same way, especially now with Game Pass, play a game for an hour, move to the next one, move to the next one. That's how I was when I was around that age, with Super Nintendo. I would play and move to the next one. Like I love A Link to the Past, never beat it because it was like I would play, get to another, dungeon, I might clear it, I might not, then I would move on to the next game. And it wasn't until PlayStation where, like you said, that's when I really began to identify as a gamer because I was all in on PlayStation. And the other thing we didn't talk about, like I remember when my Walkman broke, my CD player Walkman, as a joke, I'm like, I'm gonna put it in my PlayStation and see if it'll work. And it did. Whoa. At the time, that blew me away that this thing played audio CDs. So I wasn't even that mad that my CD Walkman had broke. I would listen to myself. Like I remember vivid memories of cleaning my room and putting on like, The Prodigy and letting, the Fat of the Land album play while I'm cleaning my room. Vivid memories to this day. In fact, if I listen to the Fat of the Land, I almost always associate it with cleaning because that's what I used to do. I'd listen to it and I'd clean my room on my PlayStation.
Well, and that's me with that album anyway. But like I associated with us, like our time back then, like Game Crazy, going to tournaments and listening to that whole album and winning a couple tournaments. I just there's like certain music that just brings us back to certain moments of that bring back all the flood of
That
memories.
that one is like the defining place. I mean, I listen to a lot of different music. Of course, my favorite is always going to be metal, but my
Hmm.
actual favorite album of all time is The Fat of the Land. My favorite, the old question, if you were on a desert island, you can only listen to one album.
Which would you
My
get?
answer,
Would you want to listen to for the rest of your life? Yeah.
yeah, Fat of the Land is my answer.
Yeah, you got so much variety on that album, and it just keeps your blood pumping, and you
But I
just
do
go up and.
associate that with PlayStation very, very much so. In
Hmm.
fact, I wonder, I feel like it came out not too long, maybe 97.
Yeah, I think so. Because I associate that Crystal Method, um, Garbage. There's quite
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
bit of like music
97.
that came out around that time that
Oh
like
my God, Gran Turismo 2 soundtrack is awesome.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah, right there, man. June
I think that
1997.
had Garbage. I want to say it had the Crystal Method. It had Cake.
Hmm.
I had this band called Soul Coughing. That was I think they were more known for their song called Circles, but they had a song on there that was really good called Super Bon Bon. Despite the
Yeah.
title, it's a really good song.
And it's gonna be a missed opportunity with like my son's generation because like it was so cool, like us hanging out at Game Crazy, like just like look browsing what was new, talking the shit with the guys that worked there until I worked there, and it was the same thing. And then being able to play whatever you wanted to play during the downtime, or because we had consoles hooked up. But like even just like hanging outside while whatever was going on, and like just talking about music or games or movies. Um, and I just don't know what it's going to be like for them at that point.
They'll have their version of it, just like there was one from my age. You know, Eh,
Well, you got to get them to stop
things
playing the one game,
the more
Fortnite
things
and
change,
and,
the
and
more they stay the
Roblox.
same.
Well, I mean, talk about the impact on the life. Games, especially with PlayStation and disc-based games later.
Hmm.
How many new artists I started listening to because of these games?
Mhm.
Now that they can put Redbook audio on there, like you're hearing CD quality versions of these songs.
Yep.
And there's so many artists that I listen to now that I got introduced to through a video game that I probably would have never heard of before. And I think that's one of the biggest impacts that's lasted with me throughout this time.
Well, what's funny with that is you're seeing that now, or you have been since for the last 2 decades, with television series where new bands are introduced as the background music for a series that it start kickstarts a career for them. You know, I remember when Smallville came out. That was the same way. They did. Supernatural did the same thing, but they were a mix of
One Tree
old
Hill did
classic.
the same thing.
One Tree Hill,
Yeah.
even Yellowstone, and some of these newer shows. The people that are involved actually start off, they're small bands. They get invited. Sometimes they actually star in the show as a character, and then all of a sudden, the
Hmm.
next thing you know, their career, singing careers kicked off. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
what for me,
go ahead.
this whole thing was I got to watch you guys grow up. I got watched my children grow up, and through them, I made friends, and y'all came into my house, and I tried to make sure we all had fun together and keep the peace when things would get heated. But and games and movies were the centerpiece of that. You know,
And I still remember a story that you told. I remember a lot of them, but one that it stuck out to me at the time, because we have the internet and it was so easy for us. But you told a story about you got stuck on a game. Um, it would have been early, so it might have been like NES. It might even before NES. It could have even been Atari, but I want to say it was NES, where you got stuck on a game and you actually went to, I think it was a comic shop or like a friend's shop, and you talked with the people that were there. almost like networking. Say, hey, have you played this? How did you get past this? Or what did you do? Like that was your like a version of the community at the time. And I always
That's
will
right.
that because like, we still had versions of that. But I mean, this for you was like I getting in your car, driving, you might take the kids with you, let them go run around the aisles, but you were specifically looking out for someone like, hey, have you played this? How did you get past this part? Which I think that's really cool because it's a we really didn't even have that. I mean, we always had our friends with us, but we had strategy guides, and then eventually we had the internet. So that story that you told has stuck with me, forever. I always thought it was really cool.
I remember the first time Vince told me there was a strategy guide. You could go buy. We just go buy the strategy. What?
Yeah.
What the hell's the strategy guide? You mean they make walkthrough guides? Oh yeah, it tells you where everything is. Tells you, what all the stuff. But that's like cheating. And when I'm playing a game, I never end up playing it like the walkthrough says.
Well, yeah, because it's just giving you a guide of how you can proceed. I mean, because remember,
But how
you
many
got stuck.
people
You
don't
got
do that?
oh
How
well,
many people don't explore anymore? They've got
no.
the game, they got the strategy guide, they're trying to complete a
Well, see, now it's YouTube videos.
Yeah, it's YouTube
That's
videos, or and if it was
yeah.
FAQs before that.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that at least with like strategy guides, you got interviews with like the team, the developers, like you got really cool
Posters.
artwork. Yeah, there was a lot more than just how to do this. It was like even like there was secrets that you wouldn't be able to find unless you had a book like
Find you.
Hey,
um
the back of the Resident Evil manual. That's all I had to say. You already know.
I mean, I don't even think my copy has. I think mine's the edited version, but hold on.
Oh man, don't make me dig through my crap and pull mine out.
You're probably gonna have to grab your. Wait, no, yeah, here it is.
No, yeah, all the secret cats. And then underneath that one, strategies and much more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it became part of their marketing.
Yeah, no, the typos. It was all
The
the
typos
typos
for
that
that
did,
one, yeah.
that
Oh,
did make it
but
through the QC.
do you remember when you would buy the game and sometimes it would be bundled with the strategy guide?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That
Sometimes,
happens a
yeah,
lot
that
later
happened.
on.
Yeah, that happened whenever GameStop started to like kind of outdo EB Games and stuff, and before they had purchased them. Um, but yeah, no, I mean the that was the fun about it. It's fun to play these games and explore and learn them and take the time to do it. But it was like cool to like just find this information out. Even like because I usually was the guy that played a lot of these games and people came to me to figure it out. And then because I remember I used to buy the strategy guides, never really used them, had them just because I thought it was just, to me, it was like when you bought a game, you bought the strategy guide. It was like a companion piece. So that way, like it came to the point where I had friends asking me how to do something. Here you go. I don't need to, I don't need to impart this knowledge. You figure it out. But
I remember I had to I only think I did it once, but I had to borrow your Parasite Eve strategy guide.
hmm
Because that, not counting Pokemon, Parasite Eve was the first, RPG that I was really playing by myself.
yeah.
Again, not counting Pokemon.
hmm
So I needed the help. And I remember I borrowed your strategy guide.
Yeah. I mean, it happened many times. I had
Went to the shooter
Jonathan.
library and checked it out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what it was. I mean, it was like we were the house of. Remember, you told, and this is something I'll never forget, was you told me is like I started collecting because of you, because you had everything pristine. You had it like your PlayStation 1, your
Yeah,
PS2.
no, I wish I would have met you back when I had the NES and the Super Nintendo. Maybe I wouldn't have thrown away my boxes.
Hey, I threw
Oh,
away
he's
my
up with the
too.
boxes now.
I
The
keep it now.
sucker.
We keep it now, but like there was times Dad would be buying me games, and there would just be he had thrown away the box, the manual, and it was just the carts, and I was like.
Well, no, when I'm cleaning house, if it's on the floor
No, no,
or
no, no,
under
no.
a
I'm talking about
bed
I'm
or
talking about
something like that,
birthdays.
it goes in the
There was a
garbage.
few there was a few birthdays that you had got me stuff in a box and there was no box and manual. It was just the game.
Just a game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So I
that
mean,
might have been because I just bought the game instead of the
I
box.
mean,
right.
they felt like trash. It was thin cardboard,
Yeah, it wasn't like the
more
Genesis
cardboard,
cartridges in the
inside.
the cases and
And
stuff. Whatever.
especially if you were the type of person that had a Genesis at the same time with the clamshell case. Like
Hmm.
one really felt like, hey, I'm going to put this on my shelf. The other one didn't.
Yeah.
And
No, yeah,
I
you're
really
right.
do put that more on Nintendo's shoulders because it didn't feel like anything you want to keep. And they kept that up for 3 generations.
Maybe if they did something similar to the VHS style
Like the
boxes and
Disney
stuff.
movies
Yeah. I mean, maybe people would have been taken more
or
thought
a
of it.
sleeve.
Yeah, a sleeve. But I mean,
Now,
that was what was cool about like these. You had these nice jewel cases or the long boxes that, of course, these do
They
fall
felt
apart.
they felt part of it, especially well, it worked better in the CD's favor because at the time they were like, I remember my parents would tell me, "Don't touch the back of the CD. You touch
yeah.
it even once, it won't work anymore." So the case felt like a necessity for your
Yes.
disc.
Hmm.
Well,
And
and
of
then
course, with
you always had to have that felt cleaner so you could wipe the back. You wanted to keep them pristine because the minute you scratched it, then you were trying to buy one of those
disc
scratch
doctors,
removers that
yeah.
never truly worked right,
Never worked
and
right.
or
I
you ended up
remember
having to rebuy
you
the
had one
game.
bit that I remember. I don't want to. I feel like I was one of the first ones that was around when you used it, but it was the one you
Yeah, it
pop
was
it
a
in
wheel.
there,
You popped it in
it
there.
had the thing,
The wheel, yeah.
and it left a freaking cleaning pattern on the back of the disc.
It worked.
I'll never forget your face when you turned it over. You had this face like, son
What
of
the fuck?
a bitch.
Yeah, yeah.
Like imagine taking a bicycle tire and spinning it and then turning it in a 360 degrees as it spun. And it just left marks all, and you're like,
Yeah, and it was a circular
And
pattern
it
all
it
the way.
clean
Yeah.
it made it took out the scratches, but it left this like awful looking pattern on the back of your disc. Um,
what was it? Not Funko Land. I don't want, I know it wasn't Game Crazy. I'll just say Funko Land because I know it wasn't Game Crazy. They wouldn't take them if they had the patterns. Like if you wanted to
no,
go
Oh
trade
yeah.
them, they wouldn't take them if they had the clean pattern on the back. Even if you made the case that they worked, they'd look at them like, ah.
well, and it
Because
was a
they knew
stupid
they
accessory
knew they
that
could
we were
sell
pushing
it.
at Game Crazy for $30. You had this liquid that you were supposed to spray on it, so it would help with the friction. And as you ran it, it was supposed to smooth it out, like take out the scratches that first layer. But for some reason, the thing was a shoddy design, and I luckily all my games played, but I knew people that would trade that shit in because they just sit there and grind that thing until it was nothing, like it completely wiped off the data. And they're like, "My game doesn't play anymore because this." Well, the thing is, the thing sit there and told you you're only supposed to do it like once to the thing at all.
Did you
Yeah,
read the
you didn't read the
instructions?
instructions, but it was a
Yeah,
shoddy thing. I wonder how
yeah.
many games are destroyed because of that.
So not, I don't like you said yours worked. You used it correctly. I mean, it still
Hmm.
left that gross
Yeah, it's
pattern.
still that great, yeah, the awful
You
pattern.
used it correctly. Well, a friend of mine is younger than me. His name was Edward, and I remember making a joke, and it made everybody laugh except for him. So it was SmackDown 2. So the first PlayStation PS1 got 2 SmackDown games. SmackDown and then SmackDown Just Bring It was the
Yep.
sequel. Okay. So he had SmackDown Just Bring It, and I don't know what happened, but he needed to clean it. So he bought a similar tool to the one that you had, the bicycle. This one rotated it, and he used that to clean it. But I don't know what the hell he did. He ground that thing down, and it was even worse than it was before. And there was a couple of us there, and he was really upset. Of course, again, we're younger, we're kids, and it looked like he was going to cry. And I said, "Man, you ground this thing down so much. It's it's no longer the sequel. It's back to SmackDown 1. That's how far back he went on the list." And he looked at me like you he was so
Get the
pissed.
hell
And
out
of
of my
course,
house. Yeah.
yeah, and then everybody around us started laughing. And yeah, he didn't. I remember he didn't enjoy that one too much, but
No,
Dylan, you
I'm sure he.
son of a.
Yeah, I don't think he did. No, I don't think he did. No, but
You
that's
know
that's
what? I want to say something real quick. One thing that, like, getting back to Resident Evil, it was one of the first games that where I wanted to know the mythology
yeah,
behind it. Like both you and me, we'll go get the books, go get anything. When like the Wesker files and all that, it was so much more than a game.
Yep.
Mhm.
and you wanted to know all about it because they created this great big world. And you know,
Well, especially reading like the journal entries you'd find in the game.
mhm.
I mean, to this day, outside of like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, and I haven't experienced another game that had in-world lore like that affected me in the same way. Like, granted, when I play, Oblivion and Skyrim, I read a lot of the books that were in those games, but they felt like, like just world building. The first time you read The Keeper's Diary in PS1, I mean, that elicited a feeling from
Yep.
Yes.
reading this guy go from a happy-go-lucky researcher or a keeper to devolving into a zombie. And it's so simple, but it was so cool. But with the background music, and then you're reading these entries, and one of my other favorite ones was reading some of the newspaper clippings you find later on in the underground lab that was talking about the murders in the Arklay Mountains.
Art Mountains,
And
yeah.
it's like, oh man, like you feel like you're a part of it, especially at that time.
hmm
So
The
yeah,
only two that I would add to that I felt did a homage to that would have been Dead Space and BioShock, the first one.
oh yeah, the
I
audio.
could see
The
I could
box,
see BioShock.
yeah.
Yes. Dead Space, it was
Well, that's how you got a lot of the
you got
lore was because the
yeah.
audio logs that you'd come across of like what was going on and transpiring, but it was different because you were getting a visceral moment of this recording
Visceral
of what's
games.
going. Yeah.
Well, it was that what do you call Lovecraftian? There's a name for it, but I can't think of it. Um and another thing was you never really knew if it was real or not. Was this a hallucination that somebody was going through? Whereas with Resident Evil and some of the other games we've mentioned, it felt like you could step into it and it was real life. This
Well,
could
yeah,
happen.
that was the same thing with BioShock. I mean, at least with BioShock and Resident Evil, you got that feeling. And Silent Hill, but
Eldritch horror.
Eldritch Horror, yeah. But yeah, but there were so many things. I mean, like the multi-tap, the controller, of course. Um, the Game
Dual
Shark,
Shock.
the DualShock controller, which revolutionized gaming as far as 3D goes.
Got that one,
Um,
or that was a Christmas gift.
I mean, you're looking at like this really impacted like the direction of gaming for years to come. I mean, um, and it seemed like Nintendo was trying to follow with the 64, but just couldn't meet it. I mean, it had its moments, but I mean, you look at like the library from the PlayStation 1 and in the 64, there's no comparison.
I don't think that you would have had PlayStation today if the Nintendo 64 was a disc-based system.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't think you get the PlayStation that you have today. I don't even know if you would get PS3. It might have lasted through PS2, but if you take the Nintendo 64-bit on a CD, without the overhead the costs of cartridge production,
hmm
you have a familiar, Japanese company. All the RPGs that went to PS1, they
Yeah, it would
stayed.
have been on the 64. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that remember it was going to be an add-on for the Super Nintendo. So we would have had the Nintendo PlayStation. That was originally the plan. So um had that happen, who knows where the gaming landscape would have went. And maybe Sega would still be around right now,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so I mean, ask yourself why did the Sega CD, which was very popular, why did it fail? Because that was really where you started seeing the Sega go down.
I
Uh,
think to me, I only knew one person that had it, and they didn't play it as much as they did their Genesis or even their Super Nintendo. The FMV games were garbage.
hmm
And obviously you have something like Snatcher, but we didn't know about Snatcher at the
we didn't
time.
know about Snatcher.
You
Nope.
know, we knew about these full motion video games. We knew about Charles Barkley's Shut Up and Jam. We knew about Crisscross Make My Video. But when you actually rented them and played them, and I swear this is true, Blockbuster in particular added a premium to Sega CD games for rental. So like your normal Super Nintendo games, I always remember was $4.25. And it was about $1.50 more for a Sega CD game. So when we go rent one and play it on my friend's brother's Sega CD, it was always costing a little bit more. And I never felt like it was worth it. You didn't get a big graphics boost. I mean,
No.
you got CD quality audio, and there are some hidden gems on there, but overall, you weren't getting like that much of a big difference. And then boom, what happened right around the corner? Sega Saturn.
Yeah. Well, on top of that, you had but in between that, you had the 32X, which I mean, it felt like
and then you had Sega
unfortunately,
CD
it was all more of
32X
a
games.
yeah, and it was more of a just more of a gimmick. It was more of this like I mean, there was some good games, but nothing compared to what you were getting with Super Nintendo and then when the PlayStation came out. And then when the Saturn came out, they shot themselves in the foot with like just launching it the day
It just
of
released.
E3.
It released so quick. There was almost no
No
build.
time. Yeah, no time for anybody to put stuff on the shelves and stuff like that. There were people that were going to Toys R Us's or other electronic stores that were looking for the system and they didn't even have it in store or on the
Stop. Yeah.
shelves for people to buy. So,
And
and
it was like, why buy a say first? I mean, if you put yourself in the shoes of a parent that doesn't know what is a 32X, what is a Sega CD, and then if you get someone who knows what they're talking about, like if you go to KB Toy Store, they might even straight up tell you, "Hey, don't get this. Wait, in a couple of months, Sega Saturn's coming out." Or, Sony, the people that make your television, they're releasing a game system. Why don't you wait? So I think a lot of
Yeah.
those factors played into it.
Mhm.
See, Sony had that name recognition because they'd been around for so long. You know, Nintendo had to make inroads here. But
They did well. They started marketing to more to a younger generation. The PlayStation was more for teens and adults. Um,
I
you know,
think the PlayStation created the modern gamer, as far as I'm
yeah,
concerned.
yeah,
Mhm.
I would say
That's a
that.
good point.
Because I still remember reading a funny story. So, Rob Thomas, lead singer of Matchbox 20,
Match Point 20, yeah.
there's a whole article about what he was going through right around the time that he had teamed with Santana to make that song. Gosh, talking about the big
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
Yeah.
song. Anyway, it's the whole article about the lead up to making.
It's playing in my head right now,
It's
but I
playing.
can't.
It's
I'm
playing.
waiting for a lyric to come up that I could say. My
So yeah,
senorita, whatever.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Now I gotta type it in.
He's gonna look it up.
Smooth.
Smooth. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, smooth. Yeah.
So there's a whole article that I read about the creation of that song. It was very interesting, super cool. But the part that always stuck out to me was that when Rob got pitched this song, he says in the story he was at his then girlfriend's apartment smoking weed and playing PlayStation. Is a super successful, rich musician who's made it. And what's he doing in his free time? He's smoking and he's playing PlayStation.
Mhm.
And then who was it? And then of course you got that. I mean, a little bit later on, but you got that famous picture of LeBron James walking around carrying his PS2 with him. He's like, he ain't going nowhere without his PS2. So you don't have that without the PlayStation.
And yeah, I mean, it was a phenomenon, and it even took off even more as like how successful as Final Fantasy VII was, especially with all the ads on like billboards and theaters, on the TV, on
Dude,
MTV,
advertising on wrestling at
everywhere.
that time was huge.
Yeah. So, I mean, advertisement that definitely was a thing, and you couldn't talk to anybody who didn't have a PlayStation. At least in our generation. I know people that didn't have a PlayStation now, but it's like most everyone we knew had one, and we all played. We'd all go with each other's houses. And that's how we experience so many different games that we didn't even know because we were only limited to what was available at the rental stores or at Toys R Us's or EBs. There'd be times that games would come out that we never knew about, like Elemental Gearbolt and that collector's case with the guns and everything that our mind was blown about it. And we were trying to figure out how we were going to scramble to get $100 together to go buy it at the pawn shop that was right next door to the school.
And I want you
Uh,
to think about when you say that, think about like the guns for the PS,
the gun con.
the accessories and everything
Yep.
that you could have, man.
I
I
had the
still
steering wheel for Gran Turismo.
Yeah. Gran
I still
Turismo
think
and
today,
Time Crisis.
the Time Crisis 2 gun that they created, which you could use for anything, any other game, because I used it for Dead Aim, um, was the best controlled gun. You could aim it, it was precise. Your movements were all here. Everything you could do with muscle memory. Whereas you know, okay, we're gonna put something here, we're gonna put something in this hand, and then now you got to try to coordinate with each other. You know, and it was such a big steep learning curve, and I could get on this game and just play all day.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Um,
you got Namco to thank for that. Namco was the ones who designed that. They worked with Sony a little bit, but it was Namco who was the ones that were doing all the gun games and all that stuff. It gave third-party developers the access and ability to make anything they wanted without the limitation of what Nintendo was doing at the time.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of with the Nintendo, you could only make 5 games. And if you wanted to make more than that, you had to make a third party company, another company, and make another 5 games that way. And then I think they went a little lax with that with the Super Nintendo, but the PlayStation, that's why Square moved the PlayStation because they saw CD being the future. And they had already been working on this, Final Fantasy VII. And Nintendo wasn't going to budge. So it was like, you know what, we're going to go with the company that's going to allow us to have the ability, the tools, and access to everything we want. And that's why they had more third party to support. Um, and of course, when you have a variety of developers for one console, it becomes easier to develop for them. That's why, like, it was amazing seeing some of the games towards the end of the console that were pushing the limits of what that system can do. That was almost early PS2 graphics. I mean, it was amazing. You look at the cutscenes from Final Fantasy
Final
9
Fantasy
and
8.
8. Yeah, and 8.
Final Fantasy 8 blew me away while I was watching it at your house.
Yeah.
How they went from cutscene to like gameplay.
Gameplay and then gameplay
to
in
where it's the
cutscene.
game, yeah,
Yeah, cutscene playing while you're playing. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Um, when they started moving characters from the chibi to full formed characters, like, from 7 to 8 or Parasite Eve, and that's just Square. I mean, you look at Metal Gear and how amazing that game is, and like that game right there. I mean, I know we didn't get to talk about it too much, because something me and Andrew are going to work on in the future here, but one of the things I did want to bring up was like a memorable moment was like when that game came out, we had pre-ordered it, Dad, but you went right in the hospital. And like I played through it to get my mind off until you got out. And then when you came home, I sat down and you played through it and I helped you through it. And it was just one of those moments because like we played the original Metal Gear and then Metal Gear Solid just was like it took it to a whole new level. It was so
yeah.
cinematic. It was just like the best video game we'd ever played when it came out.
And it
I
had those
played,
funny moments. We were cracking
yeah,
up.
fourth
You know, the
wall
box
breaking.
crawling in fourth wall. Yeah, all that. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah. One thing about Sony is that in the games, they have these moments where they break through to a new level, and then it continues to grow, and then they kind of get stale again, and then they break through to a new level where other games didn't. Other game systems couldn't do that. They were stuck. They didn't have a vision of where they wanted to be. And to this day, the only PlayStation I don't have is the one that's sitting right beside you. And it was just because when it came out, it was so expensive.
It was
And
hard to
I
find
don't,
because of COVID.
yeah, COVID. And the other thing was, I don't ever buy a game system the first year. You know that.
Mhm.
I'm not going to be anybody's beta
Beta
tester.
testers.
I've been through that, done that, fought a game manufacturing company, and after I was done with that, I was just, that ain't happening anymore. Um, I don't know if you ever told Andrew that story, but
That sounds familiar. I think that was one of those those late nights at the trailer stories where, our hands are hurting. We've been playing for like 10 hours. We need a break, and it's time for a Mr. Shooter story.
The ministry, sure. That's what it was, always was. So guys, what you guys experience now when we're going in these topics and my dad goes on an adventure of telling us a story, that's what it was like at home all the time. It would be
Hey, to
great
this day,
stories and
even
captivate an audience and
to
still
this
does it.
day, your dad's stories, like I can tolerate, when somebody, I always try to keep it short to the best of my ability. And I can tolerate most people like the way they tell stories, but eventually like I get tired and I want it to cut off. With the exception of your dad. Uh, when you have an entire birthday revolving around you, but then we all stop to listen to his stories, it says a lot.
Yeah.
I think, in fact, I remember the one that he told at your birthday about him when he was working as a janitor downtown and a tornado hit the building.
oh, I was fire marshal, and I had to
Oh,
clear the floor. Yeah, and I was like making sure everybody was going down the stairs because they couldn't go through the elevator, and I had to make sure all the doors shut. They make you go and shut every door to act as a break if something's going like for fires and stuff. And I remember coming around the corner and I'm walk up to that big giant plate glass window, and here's a tornado coming right at the building. And I was leaning into it, looking at the glass, going, I'm going to die. I'm going to watch this. And realizing, you should be running, stupid, but this looks so cool. And the fact that it jumped over 45 and went off to another part of downtown, and just walking downstairs and seeing the devastation of all the windows that were exploded outward, and I was like, man, it was safer where I was than taking people downstairs and out of the buildings. But you know I've been blessed, and you, sir, I owe you my life. You don't know it, but when I coded and was, dead for almost 30 minutes, they kept resuscitating me, and the heart was like, nah, we're done. Just let us go. It finally brought me back, and I was in kind of a small coma for a bit. And my daughter and them would tell me that I would come out, but never really coherent. And she was playing Beatles music for me and everything, and they were getting worried if I was going to come out. And so my son-in-law goes, you know what'll bring him out of this, right? And she goes, what? He goes, I can go get Ricky Owen. We can play it here at the hospital. And they tell me, and I don't remember this, but they tell me all I did was raise my hand and go. And she goes, that's when I knew he was going to make it. That's when I knew my dad was coming back. And it was,
man.
so, how many people do you know can say Rick Keogh saved my life?
Yeah.
The sheer anger.
The sheer anger. That resuscitated your brain of like
brought me back from hell to destroy every copy of that movie ever created.
And
that's yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say your dad was the first in a fun way, he was the first troll that I had ever met. It's specifically the epic arguments you guys would have, and I knew what your dad was doing because it would set you off.
Yes, yeah.
When he would say that Superman was stronger than Goku, those arguments were some of the best that ever took place. Because I love you, Vince, but you took the bait every time.
I did.
Dad would be sitting back there in his chair, taking his insulin, listening to you. He's like, oh, no, I hear you, son. I hear you. But, Superman, son of Krypton. What does that even mean? He said it with such conviction. You're like, Dad, you don't understand. I don't care. It's like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't care what your little books. This is Detective Comics we're talking about. And
My daughter calls it my poking the bear. She goes, Dad, you don't always have to poke the bear. I said, but it's there.
and it wasn't just you. I think
Oh my God, it was Dave.
if someone gave you a little nugget of something, you could do it. I feel like
Yeah.
everybody had a little bit of something
Well,
that
and it would happen to Dad too, because how many times David would come over, David Vogt,
Oh, David knew how
and
to. David,
he'd be like, so I was reading this and blah blah blah, and I really like this idea. No, no, that's not right. And then David would sit back and be like,
eating the popcorn.
"Corn-
Yeah,
yeah,
I
eat
know.
the popcorn."
That day he came into the trailer and goes, I've been reading and discussing in my psychology class. I happen to think Bruce Wayne is an enabler, and he is just as guilty as all the people that he doesn't kill. I think Bruce should kill all his villains. And I was like, just you could hear like a record scratch, that scratch of a record, and it was on.
I got it from him, man. But then he would do that to everybody else. How many times do you do it to Josh? And he even
uh,
did it to
you may
Richard.
not remember you got me. I mean, because I got you with Riccio.
Mhm. Yeah,
You're
come
welcome.
beating on my door in the middle of the night, going, "Riccio is the greatest ever," and then running off. Yeah,
But you got me back. So, my favorite horror series at the time, I don't know, even now maybe, was Nightmare on Elm Street. And like I knew a lot, about the series. I even have like an out of print, like behind the scenes telling of all the movies. And one of the things that I had always held on to, and I don't know if you knew and were trolling me, but then you found out later, but one of the things that I had held on to was that, uh, in the movies, they never said that Freddy Krueger was like a child, called him a child murderer. It's
murderer.
very
Yeah,
specific what they're saying.
Yeah.
You were adamant that no, they did say it. I said, I'm guaranteed they didn't say it in the movies. So you ceded some ground and you said, well, they said it in the shows, but the shows took place in what was essentially canon that would have never interfered with the movies. It was basically DLC in a way.
Yeah.
I remember refusing to accept that. And I said, no, the shows don't count. The shows don't count. And you stuck to your guns and said, I don't know if you were just trolling me or you knew, but I come to find out later because of the commentary on the DVD. Wes Craven said it right there. Because we called him a murderer specifically to avoid the other M word because of what was happening in the U.S. There was like a satanic panic in the 80s at the time.
80s. Yeah,
And this stuff was going on supposedly in daycares. It was a very sensitive topic. But Freddie was always meant to be that, not just a child murderer. And he said it right there in the thing. And he said, he goes, we made up for it in Freddie's nightmares by having a newspaper clipping that said, like, local child. And I remember hearing that and going, he was right.
well, and it wasn't just there. There were things that, if you watch the movie, certain things people would, especially the first one with John Saxon, who's the sheriff, the father, and they're talking about what they had to do to him, and they were like, well, did he murder them? And he's like, no, he did much worse. And as a parent, you're thinking, what could this guy have done
Yeah.
to torture these kids? Because he tortured them, and so you start adding one thing upon the other, and you start assuming. And then I would hear and read interviews and things like that. So, and then they play up on it in the remake, and everybody hated that.
Yeah.
They really hated it because that is just so, our society.
Well, I mean, that's
doesn't
in a
accept
way
that.
that makes him pretty much, one of the top movie villains because, he wasn't a victim. So you look at Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead was a victim.
Victim.
You look
He's
at
always the victim of the previous person.
right,
You resurrect him, you become the next Pumpkinhead.
and then you look at Pinhead, Hellraiser. That was an ideology. He I know he was a Nazi, right? He was like an SS soldier.
Well, he was a soldier. I believe he was a British soldier. He wasn't a
Okay,
Nazi.
okay, so he was just a British
He
soldier.
was looking, but
He was a
it
victim
was
too.
this
He
thing.
stumbled
Yeah, he
across
was
the
a victim.
bots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he all these people are looking for something. They all have a kink or something to them. And this box is supposed to
That's
offer
your
you the
nature.
greatest ecstasy, the great, fulfillment. So I'm sure his fulfillment wasn't to have somebody, make his head look like a giant pincushion.
Well,
And he,
that's why I put Freddy, up there because when you look at a movie, and again, Jason, he was a victim. So you look at, we're putting these guys up there, and Freddy, I mean, he was a bad dude. You
well,
could
Freddie
consider
and
him a
Michael,
victim because of his upbringing.
Hey,
Freddie,
Michael,
Freddie and
Freddie and
Michael
Michael.
Myers are evil. They are the personification of evil. Um,
Jason
and they played
is
up on with
kind of
Freddie where
he is the
he's
victim.
the
The mom was the more the vindictive,
yes.
because after the demon took over his body, he wasn't, Voorhees
He
anymore.
wasn't running it. He
No,
was
it
riding
was
it.
just the body. He was the
Yeah.
vessel or
And see, I think that's why I really like, the Terrifier movies now because I think Art the Clown is a very, very good villain, because he was a serial killer, and then he died and got possessed and came back, and
God,
was
I
a
hate
piece of
those.
shit.
I hate those movies. I'm gonna shoot a clown first and ask questions later, man.
Oh man! All right, well, I guess the last thing, not to steal your thunder,
no, you're good, man.
special
No,
moment.
you never. I'm enjoying being on here with you
Well,
because I
that's the
haven't seen
thing
you
is
in a
like
while.
because I had talked to Vince about this, and I said if we don't have a guideline, this is 7 hour
Oh
thing.
yeah, well, because we got to catch.
Oh,
We
I
got to
do
catch
that
up, bro.
already.
That's catching up. That's that.
So this last one, special moments that you want to highlight around the first PlayStation. I know we touched on
On a
some of
few of those.
those. This is the only one I don't have an immediate answer for. So if anybody else wants to take the reins, I got to think about this one personally.
Um,
Special moments you want to highlight around the first PlayStation. I just thought,
My, plain and simple, spending time with my children. Making that connection with my kids, my son, my daughter. We each enjoy them for different reasons, but we could always come together for a game session. Even if we were mad at each other, you'd be playing, and one of them who might have stormed off, they're gonna come down. They're gonna sit. They're gonna, what are you doing? And playing, and then it's gonna slowly melt away, whatever that was, and you start enjoying yourself. So, it's just a moment that you get. Um, and the one thing is, I tried to do was never allow it to become um, a crutch, you know, because I wanted to make sure we went out and did other things. Went out, we went to the park, we went and did other things. I never wanted to become obsessed with anything. I always thought anything that you do and without moderation, it tends to take over your life. So, um, and um, I got to meet some great people from it, that I would have never have met. So,
yeah, I think for me, um, was meeting the how like meeting my friends happened because of different games I played. Like meeting James because of Xenoblade. I mean, Parasite Eve actually, and then Xenogears, and then like fighting games because that's one of the biggest things we, you know, Andrew through Resident Evil, Jonathan through Final Fantasy. Unfortunately, I don't really talk to him much anymore, but like, door's always open, man, if you ever watch this. But like even like my best friend Jeff, through playing other stuff on the NES, but still we had connections through Mega Man, like the X series. A lot of that stuff transitioned over to PlayStation. It was just all the friends that I got to meet and experience and be a part of their lives as much as they were a part of mine. And like that gift that I still have a connection with everyone mostly that I know. Um, we may joke and we poke fun, but I mean, deep down, we always have a good time. Anytime we're together, it's like we were back at my apartment or at the house, the trailer, wherever we were at, like we were 16 years old again. And then we were reliving it, just like we're right now. We were reliving a moment that we had back then. Um, Even to my sister just showing up at one point whenever she called me. But
Right on cue.
yeah, yeah. So, but and then for me, of course, one of my highlights, but it's not technically on the PlayStation 1, it's on the PS2, but still related to the PlayStation within the 30 years is that playing Final Fantasy 11, getting to meet my wife, and I have a son, and I'm my family, so I'm happy. But that would be mine.
I guess continuing in the same vein, the if I we talk so much about the different special moments that we've had, like you're listening to your dad's stories, having the tournaments, like when you got your PS2, we had the Tekken Tag tournament,
Yeah.
and all the other great moments. So I guess to stay on topic with the family thing, one of the special moments that I had, and it's really just with PS1. Because by the time PS2 came out, my sister was a little bit older, and that whole you know, my brother's the greatest thing ever kind of wears away as she gets older. But with the
Yeah.
PS1, my sister used to come into my room and a lot and watch me play games, especially like, if our parents are fighting, that was a safe place because that really around that time, unfortunately, was sort of when their marriage began to break down. So her being in her room and being scared and hearing the yelling, because normally it's like, no, get out of my room. I don't want you in my room. My room became a safe place, not only for her, but for me as well. I liked having her in there. It was the first time I'd ever experienced like someone watching me play a game. And even though, yeah, she was drowning out, and I was too, what was happening in the other room, she was actually paying attention because she wanted to see me play these games, even during times where everything was fine. She wants to see me play Tomb Raider. She likes the fact that the main character's a girl. So she would get attached to that. And for that brief, moment of time before she grew up and, started getting friends. And of course, she starts playing softball. So she's having tournaments. That little brief window was really special to me. Even though Andrew back then wouldn't admit, that he loved his baby sister, obviously Andrew today does.
Yeah.
And that is my, special memory going back even though it didn't last that long, this particular window, her coming in there and watching me play, and even sometimes, wanting to play herself, like with SmackDown, super special.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that I'll add to just as a brief thing is just like the joy of being able to play games with my dad and my sister. You know, um, there was many moments of fighting, many moments of her getting mad at me because there was a storm coming while I was playing Tomb Raider, and it was like, "There's a tornado coming! Get off the game!" I don't care, sis. I'm playing this game. But no, I, I I cherish those memories of all that, and and it's like hearing my friends' stories. I cherish all that. So what I want to do is say thank you, Sony, for creating a console that has lasted 30 years, and here's to another 30 years. Hopefully, we'll be around for it. But you know, um, you definitely impacted our lives, and I would love to hear what some people's stories are down in the comments below. Um, and please do. But in the meantime, everyone have a great one, and we'll catch you next episode. Thanks for joining us.